green building green buildings have been around for, the last 10 years, but, it's like as we keep moving forward into that initiative, I think that it's gonna take roots and kinda keep growing.
Welcome to the Builder Hacks Podcast, your go to destination for cutting edge strategies, time tested systems, and invaluable insights to revolutionize your construction business and elevate your life. Join your hosts, Nate Piper and Keith Niels, seasoned contractors who are not just in the trenches, but are also pioneering the future of the industry through Concord University. In each episode, we dive deep into the minds of the industry's most accomplished building professionals, uncovering their secrets to success and sharing actionable tips to help you thrive. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, our goal is to empower you to build a brighter future for yourself and for America. Tune in, level up, and let's build a better tomorrow together. This is the Builder Hacks Podcast. Build your future, building America. In this week, we've got something that we get asked about all the time. So, what's coming in the industry? And that's one of those things that in so many different areas, especially when it comes to building, there's so much going on, right, Nate? And that's what I wanted
Absolutely.
to let's dive in a little deeper and find out, what are the things that are coming? What might excite whether you're in the industry now and this is like really cool and it's going to be some things to do, or whether it's the piece that it's like, hey, I don't know whether building's the thing for me, but when, hey, that future trend sounds like it could be really cool and I may want to be a part of that. So what do you see coming in, let's say, like in the next 10 years in the building industry? So what do you feel is coming down the road, Nate?
Well, I think robotics is probably gonna be the number one biggest thing over the next
Okay.
10 years that's gonna come in. It hasn't really hit yet. It's starting to be on the outside fringe, right? But it's
Right.
moving closer and closer. And there's
So
some
when
cool things with robotics. I don't know if you've seen some of these videos that they've been trying to leak out a little bit. One of them being like the guy that has the concrete, 3D printing kind of component where he puts in there and he's got a robotic arm and
right,
it just runs back and forth. That one's pretty
right,
cool. And then I saw a video about 6 months ago where it's a guy that was loading and unloading drywall and installing drywall as a robotic person. And I was like, well, that's pretty interesting, except
right.
what happens when you don't have a straight wall? But, you know, I mean, it still has some, they still have a ways to go. But just the fact that they're creating these things, it's pretty awesome.
I mean, I love that idea. And I look at those same things that you look at, and can see some things that could work out really well, really fast.
Hmm.
And then there's some things that I think are going to take a little bit longer before they ever get to that point. And, and it's one of the pieces because I know in one of our previous episodes, we talked about for construction, one of the big things is like robotics isn't going to be able to replace the average person who's working here because of the fact that there's so many different variables as far just even job site conditions. And that's
Yeah.
part of what it comes down to.
Well,
But
they'll
go
always
ahead.
need an operator. They'll never be
Right.
able just to go without one. It's kind of like, it's one of those things. Flying drones. Drones are great, but you'll still have to have someone controlling the stick,
Somewhere.
right?
Yes.
So what it really comes down to is robotics are going to be a new trade. It's a new tool that's going to have new skills, right?
Right.
And that's what people are
Especially, you're
learning.
right. Yeah, and that's definitely for those controllers and things. And there is, as far as the industry goes, for those that are concerned about that, when it comes to doing something like if you're doing a renovation and you're having to replumb something, so that at least the way it is right now, and that robotics are going to change obviously and evolve and things like that. But right now, the only way to go ahead and do something like that is to be the person to map it out, to be able to cut open the drywall to figure out, all right, well, this is the way I can go through here to get there with the least amount of damage to get to where we need to get to type of thing. So some of those pieces are definitely further down the road for the
Yep.
robotics. So for anyone who's concerned about that, but I mean, like I've seen one of the ones I've seen is where they literally bring out the pavers for a job
Oh
site
yeah.
and they dump them into a machine. They'll lay patterns. They'll lay herringbone patterns. So they'll lay diagonals. They'll lay straight lay. I mean, they can do whatever you set it for. So they can lay whatever the width of the machine is, of course. So, and I don't know what that was on what I was looking at because that wasn't in the video. But like that was one of the cool ones. I'm like, well, that I could see actually happening relatively fast.
Hmm.
Oh, and I mean, heck, you know how fast the paper guys lay papers, so this
Yeah.
machine was faster than they are.
Well, and it's kind of one of those things. It's like all the robotic pieces are going to be for new construction, not for existing construction.
Very
And
true.
and that's because they need a blank canvas to start off with.
Right.
And as we kind of talk about these future trends, like some of this is going to be, I was watching cartoons with my kids the other day, and a commercial for the
You can
Jetsons
admit it,
came.
Nate. You watch cartoons in your free
I know.
time. It's okay.
I still eat cereal out of a cup. Yeah, but this thing for the Jetsons, and I haven't seen the Jetsons in,
Oh, forever. Yeah.
forever. And it kind of made me think, I was like, were they planning for this 40 years ago or what?
Uh-huh.
I don't even know if they were on 40 years ago, but I mean, it's just kind of how funny how much automation stuff that they were doing back in those cartoons, and now it's starting to come to reality, right? Like
Oh, no
making of the
question.
food and sliding down the pole to your car and like, just all these cool little things, right? It's like, oh, okay. We were future pacing.
No question. And well, they always joke about like if you watch The Simpsons, there's so many things in The Simpsons that's come true. So
Yeah.
that type of thing. Yeah.
I always wonder if it's like if your mind is putting it out there and enough consciousness comes together, if it doesn't just
Agree. If it doesn't
manifest
just
itself.
happen because that's what everyone figures is going to happen. So that's the way
Yeah.
the universe bends.
Kind of funny, but there's a lot of future excitement I have for the industry, especially in some of these categories. I mean, AI. I mean,
Mhm.
AI's come on quite a bit, and that kind of helps you with all your back end data. Data is going to be important in the future, and I think being able to analyze the data and have somebody like AI or computer software that can analyze the data that you get, put in
Right.
mathematical calculations for all these things. I think that's another big
I
piece.
I agree the whole AI piece with what it's going to be able to do. I mean, it's one of those things that the industry is starting to call like twinning is what it's called. So you end up going ahead and designing something, and part of it goes to the field, and part of it stays in
Hmm.
with the engineers and things like that, where they can go ahead and run tests on things.
Yeah,
And especially when it comes down to you find a challenge because we know every building goes together the way the architect and engineers drew it up. And uh,
never, not once. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Not once has that ever happened. Uh, so whenever it comes back, though, they've already got that model built in the system, and they can plug it in, and then they can go ahead and do all any calculations that needs to be done, what needs to change now, how these things need to happen, and
that's
they can figure
awesome.
out better ways to go ahead and do it. Which that to me is really cool, and should on the engineering side of things really
Mhm.
help speed things up and make sure that the buildings themselves are stronger and more effective.
Well, that means it's going to eliminate the 6 or 7 guys standing on the construction site in a circle with their hard hats on, thinking like, "All right, how are we going to build this thing, guys?"
That's all right. We have other things they can do on that construction site. They may
Yeah,
not want to, but we have
yeah,
other things they can do. Yeah.
yeah. Those hour-long meetings were really fun. We got so much accomplished.
Yeah, the thing that we always look forward to. Yeah, that's a tip for you. If you're in the building industry, find yourselves an engineer, so where you can send him pictures, diagrams, so and tell him what you want to have done, and
Yeah,
they'll either go ahead and tell you yes or no. So, or if they tell you no, they'll give you what the actual solution is going to be. So much easier than having that forever meeting on the job site.
yeah, those are fun.
All right. So what else are you seeing as a trend coming in the future?
One of the things that is kind of interesting for me, especially in the remodeling space, is virtual design. Virtual design is actually a very interesting kind of concept, and I know a company here in Dallas where they've got a studio, and the studio you plug in what your layout, your specs are, and it
Mhm.
shoots it down onto a floor where you can actually walk through and visualize where all the walls and all the features are going to be, and you can actually see like, oh, this is great. I've got X amount of space for this. The refrigerator's not too close. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. A lot of people are going with the virtual AI tools on their faces
Mhm.
and kind of looking into some of that. I
I
think that's
I say I think that's like what that showroom has there in Dallas. I think that's a
yeah,
cool thing because I mean, as you get into this industry, you'll find out homeowners, most of them are very visual as opposed to being able to
hmm
conceptualize what's going on. Whereas a lot
yeah,
of times us in the industry, we can look at the blueprint and go, "No, I need more space there," without having to actually put measurement to it or see it built,
yeah,
type of thing. But yeah, most homeowners they want to they need to see it, feel it, walk through it, so see how it interacts with them. And having tools like that can save so much time because if you can go ahead and drop that ahead of time, they can literally walk through the house, see how it feels. Do we need to move a wall here? Do we need to add something there? So
yeah,
whatever the case might be, and that can definitely shorten the building cycle and for the homeowner the cost cycle. Is what it'll be because we don't have to do the up. We don't have to go ahead and build it, and then they want to change it, and then they got to pay for a change order to go ahead and change
exactly.
something.
Yeah,
So
because it's a cool aspect from the standpoint of they actually get to experience what it's going to be before.
literally, right?
And I think as more companies kind of come on, and that's going to become a normal fad, because everyone I've known that's gone through that process has absolutely loved it, and
Right.
and so then it made the purchase even better, and not to give away any secrets, but I know the builders that were kind of like pushing that, their
Mhm.
profits went up by like 12%,
Oh,
right?
I bet.
Just by adding that one feature in. And so they were able to see it, visualize it, expand it, and that raised their build cost. And so
Mhm.
I think that's
Yeah.
going to be a future phase too.
Yeah, so I look forward to seeing, and the one thing I'd love to see for that, I mean, like if you're doing a lot of the really high end houses, I definitely see those homeowners wanting to be able to
Oh yeah.
experience that, and that's an easy piece for them to add on. So I want to see where it gets to that point. Like if they've got that showroom or that warehouse that they've got there in
Yeah.
Dallas, I look to see what like those price points come into to be able to go ahead and do that to make it cost effective for some of the smaller builders across the industry to be able to their homeowners to be able to do that same thing. And if you're going ahead and redesigning some rooms in a house, so can you get it to a version that is cost effective that, hey, if you're spending $60,000 on a renovation instead of $600,000 on a new construction build, so can you get this that I can feel it when I walk through with the renovation?
Yeah, right now that it's like all things, the technology's
Right.
so new and so fresh that it's expensive for them to kind of get in there and have an hour or two going
Exactly.
through that process, right? But I think as it kind of gets a little bit further down, and more experience is kind of used on it, becomes more of a availability in the market. I think I really think it's going to help the remodelers more than it's going to help the new construction guys, because
Yeah.
the new construction, that's where it's at right now. It's in new construction, and
Hmm.
most of them are in the $1 million home and up kind of category, and they're custom built and so on. But as this thing kind of progresses, I really think the remodeling guys are going to have the most success out of this technology,
Agree. So,
because they can
and it
put
can make the changes easier, faster. It's a smaller project. So,
well, because in most remodel jobs, the customer, the hardest part is that like convincing them or sharing their vision with them and having them have faith that you're going to deliver on their vision.
right.
And we're moving walls. Sometimes they're load bearing, sometimes they're not. Sometimes we're just
Right.
opening things. But to give them like, hey, here's how your house is currently laid out, and here's where things could shift and move to. Right? We could move water lines. We could move your electrical outlets. We could move these things to put them in the places that make the house more efficient and functional for you. That's going to be it's going to be night and day. The sales team will just love that
Oh,
more.
sales team will love that, and the design team themselves will love that too.
Yeah,
So,
they get to work on it, and the engineer
yeah.
loves it too because he gets to see it in a virtual setting, and it all works. So I'm really
So
excited about
much
that.
once they start doing that and using things like the vibe boards and stuff like that to make changes while you're standing there and actually
Yeah,
see that change show up so that you can see, all right, I wanted to move this wall an extra foot to give myself a little more space in the kitchen. What does that actually mean? And then it's done and boom, it transposes down and you're actually able to see it right now to know I did make the right decision. That does work for me. That's where we want to go with this. So
yeah.
then the design team's able to make that change on the back end.
I want to get me one of
That's
those
cool.
five boards.
So what else are you seeing? I know like green building is one of the big topics that comes up. So what are you seeing happening there?
Yeah, green building's been around for, the last 10 years, but it's like as we keep moving forward into that initiative, I think that it's going to take roots and kind of keep growing. Green building is all about, making sure that the environment and the home is kind of going together. And there's a lot of years there where we just kind of built whatever we wanted to, and we didn't worry about what the environment was and what the materials we were using and what impact it was having on the your local environment.
Hmm.
And so I think it's going to keep going forward, and I think that I think it's a good thing. I'm not a full blown tree hugger, but I do like trees. But I
Like I like them as long as they're dimensional lumber.
I like to use them and enjoy them and see them. And but I think how we build is going to be just as important as what we build with, because another part of the future that we haven't really talked about is material shortages and how these things come together,
Mhm.
and being conscious on what is out there and what are we using. I mean, we've kind of gotten away from solid building materials. We've moved a lot into plastics. I don't know how long plastics are going to last, but I know that they're not going to last forever. And
Mhm.
so now we're starting to look at different technology to try to figure out, like, okay, how do we make biodomes and bioconcrete where it's hard and it's, just as strong as the concrete that we
Right.
have today, but at a fraction of the price, and it's absorbing moisture, and it only breaks down after, 100 years or 150 years, instead of
Mhm.
it lasts for, thousands of years. Because what we're
Right.
doing is we're taking our resources and we're grinding them down and we're spreading them out. At some point, we're gonna run out. And plastics, that's been the replacement for copper
Mhm.
and some of
Right.
our other precious metals. And now, at some point, we're gonna run to the end of the life cycle of plastics. So,
Yeah, and that's that. Then I agree. I mean, there's certain things we use them a lot down here for, like, I even recommend them a lot for replacing doors and windows and things like that,
yeah,
just because of the fact that they tend to wear better, so and
yeah,
last longer. And obviously, we don't have the rot challenge then that you end up getting, if homeowners don't take care of it. So those kinds of things are key when you think about it. But it is, how long does this last? Because like, and I think of like CPVC with plumbing. So
yeah,
CPVC over years gets brittle. So is
yeah.
what ends up happening.
And then that's
Right.
what causes leaks and all the rest of
Mhm.
it. Yeah, it's a balance, right? We're talking about how do we balance out what we have now
Right.
and where we're going in the future, because people aren't going to just give up their homes, and we're not going to
Mhm.
go back to like being a Pueblo Indian and carving out holes in the sides of
Side
rocks
of the
and
hill.
living in
Right.
there, right?
Yeah.
um so these things have to work and they have to come together. We just have to figure out, like, what is the next stage. And I think there's a lot of people, a lot of smart people, way smarter than me. They're working on these things that are biodeveloped, right? Or like we're living building materials.
Right.
And some of that, it's got some cool understanding of, like, okay, can I make something and have it be equally as efficient and as strong and as useful, and grow it? And bamboo is one of those things. It's like
Mhm.
bamboo is like, it will grow and it's hard and it's strong, and it's like, okay, do we start shifting over into building more like bamboo structures
Mhm.
and using that instead of 2x4 pine,
Right.
right? We're playing with these things, and so I think we're going to continue that path, especially over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, no question about it. I think it's going to be huge for the industry. It's going to create a whole bunch of other industries that end up coming in. So that's one of those things where, hey, if you come in and you don't necessarily want to be in a building industry, you may be in a building product development side of things,
Yeah,
so where you go ahead and create something along those lines. And it's good to have. I will say this for all of this is one of the things we always talk about. We would love for the engineers and architects to come out and spend a month in the field building what they design.
yeah,
So if you decided to go down the
yeah,
building products route, spend some time in the field first because you'll gain perspective and it
yeah.
really makes a huge difference. So as opposed to
It
just sitting in
really
front
does.
of a computer.
I always laugh and joke. I was like, you know, I always laugh and I joke whenever I get an engineer drawing or I get an architectural drawing. It's all 90-degree angles and it looks all fantastic on the front end. I'm like, have you ever built this thing, or like, have you ever been out in the field? Like,
Right.
none of this is going to line up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you're doing the renovations and things like that. Yeah. This stuff's not going to work out exactly like you think it's going to. Yeah.
Oh, I love those. What is it? Parapet walls on top of
Yeah.
vertical structures on top of, like,
It's a
what?
perfect
Yeah,
radius, but they want me
yeah,
to make it on a block. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
On 12 pitches, right? It's like,
Exactly.
how does this work?
Yeah.
Whatever. I digress. But I think our future is very bright, and I think there's a long path ahead, and I think it's going to be changing and evolving as it needs to. The construction industry is kind of one of those slow growing, um, always there. It's like one of the very first industries ever put on this planet, right? We all
Right.
need housing and we need structures to live
Right.
in. And it's always been, um, we call them dinosaur businesses, right? And they've always been around. And we've gone through the elevation, what is it? Not elevation, it's the We've gone through the
Evolution.
evolution. Thank you. Thank you very much. We've gone through the evolution of building materials and building sciences so much in the last 50 years. Like the technology has come on
Right.
so strong in the last 50 years. We had, 200 years before and 100 years before that, and stone castles and hard structures, and we used what was in the nature and around us to build these things.
Right.
And now we've introduced all this technology, and it's kind of like, being a Gen Xer, we went through, records to, 8 tracks, to cassette tapes, to CDs, to
Mhm.
burning, and now streaming. It's like we've gone through all this technology,
Right.
and it's the same thing with the construction industry, and we're just getting better and faster as we.
And it is that, like, using that analogy Nate just used. I mean, it's one of those things where the building industry has really started to pick up speed with the technology piece, and they're probably one of the slowest ones to actually bring it in.
Yeah,
And that's one of the pieces that you get is you get the people that have been doing this for years, and it's like, hey, the way I've done it for the last 4 decades has worked well. Why am I going to go ahead and change it now? That was what it comes down to. The more open you are to the things that are coming, the better results that you get and the better product you're able to deliver to your homeowners. So, or to your building owners, depending on what you're doing, whether it's commercial or residential. And that's part of the key is being flexible. And Nate talking about the baby boom, or not the baby, the Gen Xers having to be flexible with so many things that have come through. That's one of the things that you see with the new generations coming in is that they're more flexible with that faster change because that's
yeah,
their life. That's the
yeah.
way it's been. And that's good. And that means it's going to work to your advantage whenever you come into this because you'll be able to adapt quickly and be able to come up with those ideas and iterate fast. So, and that's the thing that's going to be huge. So
Well,
as we
and
move
bring
forward,
value, and
Mhm.
bring value to these companies. I mean,
Right.
if you get somebody today who walked in and they got a job with a construction guy, and the guy was still using carbon paper to do all of his receipts, and you introduced, hey, there's this thing called the computer, and on the computer it's got this thing called Google Drive, right? And he's like, man, my mind is blown. I'm using
Uh-huh.
carbon paper. Well,
Right.
that's what it's like, right? That's what you guys are having to deal with. You got some old dinosaurs that are using things, and you might not even know what carbon paper is. So let me explain that real fast. Carbon paper was this like piece of carbon underneath the top layer that transferred down as you wrote from one piece of paper to another pice of paper. So you
It's
had
how
a
you made
copy.
copies back in the day of your invoice. So
Yeah, and it that's the fun part, right? And that was the technology, so you didn't have to write it twice.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
We've come so far in that way, you know.
Oh, and it
But
is so, but that is, I think that's the great opportunity that's out there. So for the next generations that are
yeah,
coming in, so is because that you're used to that and being able to bring that and being able to integrate that and being able to show others because there are the biggest reason that I see that the people that have been in the industry for the longest time don't go ahead and do something new is because they just don't understand it or know it. So if they don't know it, they're not going to do it because they know the other thing and they've done the other thing, so they'll just continue doing it. You'll find though that you do have some of the people in the industry, like the people like Nate and I. So in the generation that we were born in, so we're a lot more open because we've been through a lot of those pieces. And by being open like that, that means you're now going to have people to work with who are listening to those new ways to do it because we've been listening to new ways to do things all of our lives too. So it's just we're able to do it so much faster now with things like the AI and robotics and all the different computer pieces that we're able to put together with apps and everything like that. That it just happens very, very fast. And that's what I love that. So
I
because that
do
means we're
too.
able to solve challenges really quick.
You know, and here's the crazy part, right? The carbon copy paper was still around a decade ago,
Oh yeah.
right? Like we're talking 10 years ago. We're talking
Mhm.
about 2014. That was still 85% of the people out there
Yeah.
in the construction industry were still using carbon paper. It hasn't been until like the last 5 years that they've upgraded to iPads.
Right.
And now they're just going through their software programs. I mean, we've come a long way,
Right.
but you this next generation is going to have the most impact because now you're going to be able to utilize all the technology pieces that you guys know and come and marry it with the guys that don't know how to do that side of it, but know how to do everything else. And that's where you guys come in and bring value.
Right.
And
And it's
so,
and actually it's the value then and they're able to bring you the value to teach you the construction side. You're able to teach them the technology, the connectivity side of things. which is one of the areas where I see a lot of that coming in with all the
Yeah.
new apps, all the new softwares and things, and all the tools essentially that you're able to go ahead and use in the field to make it
Mhm.
easier, whether that's capturing information to relay to your internal team, whether that's doing things like taking pictures and be able to upload them to either a website or an app that you've got that your homeowners are able to see progress of jobs going on if they're not local to be able to see it. There's so many different things. And like you were talking about before with the AI piece, all of those different pieces coming together with that connectivity makes it so much a more effective for a company. And the companies that grab onto that are the
Yep.
companies who are going to position themselves in their areas as the experts, as the leaders, to be able to go ahead and create even more. Because that's and the homeowners, the customers they're going to be working with are going to be used to dealing with those types of things, whether it's in their regular, personal life or whether it's in their work life. And the more you have adapted to those ways of communicating information, the better off you're going to be. So as a tradesperson, or as an owner of a company.
Yeah, I really see it as a partnership,
Mhm.
right? You have the old guys or the experienced guys,
Right.
and you've got the younger inexperienced guys in the industry, but they have this other skill set that is not possessed by the older experienced guy. And it takes both of them coming together then to be able to create this thing called speed, right? And without the speed, you're not making enough money, and neither one of you. So either one of you guys can be moving at your own little pace and kind of like turning the wheel, but you're not turning it fast enough to make butter, right? And that's what you need to be able to cook steaks. And the only way to cook steaks is if you have cash, right? So
Yeah.
you got to work together to be able to eat.
And that's what it really comes down to. And that's where the value comes is whenever you have the people with the construction experience and the knowledge from the industry coming together with the new people coming in with new technologies and new ways of doing things. There's no right and there's no wrong to what's being done. There's just what's most effective is what I always look at in my company, and that's what we
Yeah.
preach. So I ask, even if I have a really good idea of what we should be doing in this instance, I ask whatever team is there. If it's something on framing, I ask the framers, I'll ask the engineers. I always ask for their opinion because they may have seen something or done something already that is so much better than the ideas that I've had from my knowledge base. So, and that's
Mhm.
the same if you're coming in new and you're used to using technology and things like that. The guys that have been here and doing this, sometimes, like we already talked about with the engineers and architects, they draw it up. It doesn't work that way when it actually hits the field. So, there's that piece of marrying those two sides together to
Yeah.
truly get the result that works well for everybody. So wherever you're at generation wise, realize the value that the other one brings. So, and look for ways to work together to move your businesses and your companies forward, your industry, so to that next level. And that's one of the pieces that I always look at on the bigger side is how can this affect the industry more effectively to go ahead and create it, grow it, and move it forward. Anything else that you see is coming? So I know automated homes are one of those big things that I've seen on that, especially on the higher end homes for
Yeah.
sure. And it's trickling down into the average homes now too with certain pieces.
Yeah. I love automated homes. I think it's part of that whole Jetson thing that I was talking about earlier, right? Like, but they have so much cool technology today for your automation of your homes. Like, I know a guy that he's got a software system where he's got it set up and it's connected to his phone and it picks him up. His phone has GPS on it and it picks him up when he's about a mile away from the house and it starts kicking on his air conditioning unit. It starts, opening up and turning on the lights and unlocking doors. And as he gets to his driveway, his garage door automatically opens and he walks in and it downloads all the data from his phone and it puts it up on a spreadsheet on the computer, I mean, on the refrigerator. I mean, it's pretty cool technology. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how does all this work? How does it? And it all comes back to being able to like build it into the house. And it's a special computer that goes in there. And that's kind of like on the far end of the high end
That's
homes.
what you described. That's definitely a high end automation system. So
Yeah,
for that,
it runs about $80,000 to set up that system, but
that's to set it up. That's not to maintain it.
yeah,
So
that's
that's
just
just
to
to
set it
get
up.
what
That's just to, get it there, get it installed. But there's a lot of these things that are coming out like Philips has got these light bulbs that play music, right? And you can go through and you can have the LED lights and you can have the
yep.
dimmer
Change the
switches
colors.
and
Yeah.
and you can put all these things on your phone and have different devices and I think as we kind of keep going down this path and more of it is accessible, then more homes are going to have it. And there's just cool little added bonuses, right? It's like getting an update on your iPhone, and you're like, oh, I get this thing to do with the camera now. It's like I think it's just gonna be part of it, and I love it. I love being able to add the technology in, and partly because I'm a little lazy and I don't like walking to the wall to turn on the. That's why I had kids, so I could just send them over, and but they talk back. So
That's the whole Gen X part, because we were the remote control for the TV whenever we were younger. There was no such thing. Go change the station. Okay.
channel 4 now, please. Channel 5.
Exactly. Adjust the rabbit ears on the top of the
Hold
TV.
that aluminum foil just in the right spot.
Just a little bit more.
That was my life.
But with that automation, there's some, and it has come down in certain areas where it's come down to almost standard. Like I think of things like thermostats for the HVAC and everything like that. So most of them now are Wi-Fi enabled. You get the app on your phone that you can go ahead and control. So they're all programmable and have been for, a decade and a half now, as far as that part goes. So those types of automations where, at the whole same piece where, like Nate said, that gentleman gets close to his house, everything starts happening at the house. You can even set them, with the programmable thermostats. You can just go ahead and program it for what temperatures you want, what times of the day you want that temperature at. So if you're gone and don't have pets and you're not worried about the temperature going up a little bit, it goes up a little bit. And I obviously say it goes up a little bit because I live in Florida. It may go down a little bit if you live somewhere where it's colder. But either way, it does that, and it's based on what your typical schedule is. So is what it is. And then if it is, if you're coming home early from work one day, you've got the ability with your phone, as long as it's tapped into your Wi-Fi, to go in and adjust that before you get home still. That way it ends up going ahead and getting you where you want it. But it's the simple little things like that. I mean, most people now have seen, so many people with Ring cameras, well, that those automatically come to an app on your phone. So, I mean, I know whenever Paige, my project manager, is on site, all I hear is bing, bing, because hers has motion, and she has her motion set way too sensitive as far as I'm concerned, because it's catching people out by the road driving by.
Yeah.
She doesn't have that many people at her house. So, but those are the types of things. Those are the simple ones that have already made their way in as an everyday item.
Well, I think, I like the refrigerator that keeps a list of everything that's inside the refrigerator so you can update it, right? And I like having the light bulbs that can have motion sensors and can tell when you're in the house, when you're not in the house. And I like the doorbell cameras and all that stuff. I think all those pieces are just adding to the quality of your home. And I think it's going to continue to go. I don't know where it's going to go next. I don't know if it's going to have, know the temperature of your shower and get it set up, and you walk in and it turns on, but I'm sure it will, I know that they've got
actually, you know what, Nate, I've already put some of those in with temperature settings like that, where you can, based on the owner of the, like whether it's the husband or the wife getting in there. So they go ahead and hit their setting, and that's what it comes on at automatically then.
So it's already there. I didn't even know it.
It's already there.
I think
good.
I think a lot of those are just going to be, I don't know what the future is going to have, but if you got an idea, or if anybody out there has an idea of like what can make the home just a little bit more comfortable, there's always going to be a market for it. And
so let's say one of the things I would say too is, if you're in this industry, and especially if you're getting into the low volt side of it, which a lot of this stuff is very heavily dependent on the low volt side, even if you're not planning on putting these things in right now when you're talking to homeowners, so add the wiring for it in now. It's always one of those things where, so many things are going wireless and there's less of a need for wiring, but I still go ahead and put that in anyways, because there's going to be certain things for speed and connectivity purposes. And if you've got some of the big houses that we go ahead and build, the Wi-Fi doesn't work from one side to the other side off of one router. You're putting in multiple routers or repeaters to go ahead and boost signals and things like that to go ahead and lift it up. And you want to be able to go ahead and still operate your house no matter what. So having that extra wiring in the wall, because you don't know what the future is going to bring, is easier to have it there and not need it than, vice versa. And you've got to rip up your house to get in those pieces, because that'll prevent people from taking advantage of some of the pieces that they would love to have in the house.
I just stay away from the phone lines. I don't think
wall phones. I haven't put a phone line in forever. Yeah. But I can't even remember. That's usually the first thing when we're doing renovations. Like, you can get rid of that. Yeah.
The intercom system and the phone lines.
Those old intercom systems. Yeah, I love those. Just took one out of a townhome we're remodeling.
So. Yeah. Well, that's the other part. They got rid of the intercom system, and they got what are those little Google hubs or Alexa hubs or whatever. Like all those things are gonna be important pieces.
Yeah. So, but it's that flexibility, and it's the fun part of the industry is what it comes down to. There's lots of growth, and I think there's going to be, like you were talking about before, there's going to be more of it happening even faster.
Yeah.
So because of the people that you go ahead and get involved with, the younger generation coming in and being inventive, so and figuring out new and better ways to go ahead and do things, and that's the exciting part. So I love construction. No day's ever the same. Oh, and in these pieces that we're talking about with the trends is one of the reasons why it's always changing, it's always adapting, it's always becoming better. And that's
Mhm.
what makes it a good time.
Well,
Anything else, or do you think those are some of that's the biggest ones? I think for
well,
me, those are some.
I've got one last one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you got?
Smart cities.
Okay.
So smart cities has been a concept for quite a while, but I think it's going to really evolve in the next 10 years. And I think as we're growing and we're building and we're moving, right now it's kind of like I would relate it back to when electricity first came on and we started seeing all of these power lines come up across the road. Like most of our listeners aren't going to be doing long, road trips all over America, but I did that as a kid, right? And we had nothing to look at but the
Right.
telephone poles with wires on them for miles
For
and
miles.
miles and
Yeah.
miles, right?
Mm.
Well, where our cities are at today is that they're in the conversion of the telephone pole wire now being put underground. And that's where most of the stuff is going because the technology has kind of gotten to the point where they realize this is a safe way of being able to do it. But we have 5G networks that are on towers right now, and they're spread out. And so eventually they're either going to have to move underground or they're going to have to have a different capability of how they're generating this 5G network because some people think that it's harmful to people, some people think that it's not. Some people have these different components about wire lines and visions. Regardless, they're going to do something about it, right? But we also have to start thinking about, okay, what about our water treatment plants? And what about, our commuting and our driving and our transportation stuff, right? Trains are going to be, I think, a bigger deal in the future. I think America's behind on that. I think Europe has got it down really well. It's
Right.
being able to send out a lot of trains. I think we should probably look at underground trains as well as trains above ground.
Mm.
But I think smart cities and municipalities that are that are adopting these concepts of smart cities and how to make things more efficient and easier access to all of the key components of life, grocery stores and restaurants and
Right.
these different pieces. I think those are going to be the future of the next 5 to 20 years. And I think cities are starting to look at like, okay, if we revitalize our city, how are we going to make it more efficient in the future? And I know, Dallas is one of those old cities that is really struggling with how to do this, but Fort Worth is actually kind of adapting it. And they're trying to move forward into this new smart city kind of component. And I think
Right.
Denton, Texas, which is about 30 minutes north of both Dallas and Fort Worth, they're
Right.
starting to, explode in population, and they're starting to move into that kind of component. So I really think smart
Cool.
cities are going to be on the front end.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I like that. I love those ideas, and it's definitely. I know China's actually done some that are a lot different level because they've literally built cities from the ground up where there's been
Right.
nothing there, and they built a brand new city, and they've done a lot of these pieces already. To go ahead and start integrating that to make it easier overall. I think it's gonna be exciting. I love the fact of how do you go ahead and bring those into older cities? A city like in a developed city like Dallas. So how
Yeah.
do you go ahead and start bringing all these pieces in there to make it effective for everyone? And it's going to be fun. And again, it's just the ability to be able to do something that hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
Is one of those things that I love, and something that'll make a difference for everybody. Part of the reason why I love construction. I mean, something that'll be there for years after you're done with it, and it impacts so many different people. So across the board, whether it's a residential house or something commercial, or industrial, all of
Mhm.
those pieces all come together to create the society we live in. So what we get to experience every day.
You mean I don't get to live in the virtual world anymore?
Well, you can. As long as you have everyone else taking care of all the other parts.
Exactly.
All right. Well, perfect. So I think this wraps up what we've got. This is just some of the things. If you've got anything else that anybody thinks of or they want our opinion on or to discuss, pop it in the comments. So we're happy to go ahead and have a discussion about that, whether it's back and forth there or depending on what it is, maybe we do a follow-up piece to this. So with some of the things that the listeners have gone ahead and said, hey, what about this? What about this? So we do a follow-up podcast on, hey, these are some of the other ideas that people have brought up that they think that they're excited about. We want to go ahead and discuss that too. So that'd be a great thing to go ahead and have there. So if you've got something else, put it in the comments. So we'd love to see what else you're thinking, what else you're seeing in the industries, well, and what else you might like to see. So as far as that goes, you could be the next great inventor that has the next thing that really makes life that much easier for everybody. All right. Well, that'll wrap up this episode then. So of Builder Hacks Podcast. So make sure to tune in next week. We will have the next episode. You're going to love it. The next one I think we've got is what you need to have to be in the building trades industry. So you're going to want to see that. So the skills you have, the skills you're going to learn. So what's going to go ahead and make you valuable there. So I think it'll be eye opener for a lot of people. So make sure you go ahead and tune in next week on the Builder Hacks Podcast. If you got value from this, share these hacks to other builders or future builders. Make sure to like this episode and take 10 seconds to give a review or rating. With more reviews and higher ratings, we can help out more current and future builders of America. And we want to know what other topics you might want to hear more about or construction professionals we should invite on as guests. You can let us know these in the comments here, or on social media, wherever you heard about the Builder Hacks Podcast from. Keep building our future, building America.